Yo, what is up, Oak Life fam? This is Craig, and we are bringing you another episode of Roots and Branches on the JitTubes. This episode is brought to you in part by Barry Gordy, who put out The Last Dragon with this character, Show Enough. So if you haven't seen the flick, go see it. It's not out in theaters because it came out in '84.
It's a long time
That's
ago.
a long time ago. And then also brought to you by the Hundreds, who made this hat popular.
Basically, Greg and I realized that we've been wearing the same clothes in our television show vlog. And so we're like, we'll make it. We're obviously being sponsored.
Yeah,
so
it's clearly.
If you make these things and you want to pay us money to make this happen, let us know. And our second sponsor is Focus on the Family. Okay. What are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about, well, I'll give you a little backstory. We were brainstorming ideas and we were asking you all for ideas, and someone contacted us and said, hey, we should talk about reconciliation. So we were spitballing some ideas back and forth, and we decided we want to share those ideas. And so this will be a part one of a conversation around reconciliation, a big word, and then we'll do a part two with a bonus interview next time we do this thing. So yeah, it's gonna be fire.
So thanks to the person who brought up the big word of reconciliation. I actually think this is like a very foundational concept for what it means to be a part of a church community, especially a Christian church. That it's like it may be like what this whole thing is about. Like if I was to ask you, Greg, someone came up to you and said, what is the aim or goal of church? What would you say? Does anything come to mind?
I would say, well, the Bible is a story of reconciliation.
Ooh, that's good.
That's what I would say. And essentially it is. And it's reconciliation in various forms. But yeah, that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So this is kind of just a fun way for us to play with this idea and remember this important concept that we'll be continuing to have a conversation about, because there's lots of different ways to understand reconciliation and to seek it. So we thought we'd start by reading the Bible for the first time in our vlog. So this is 2 Corinthians 2, 16 through 21, a letter from Paul. And he writes, so from now on, we regard... Let me redo that. I don't know what regard means. 2 Corinthians 2, 16 through 21. So from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here. All of this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you, on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. God made him who had no sin to be sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So Paul uses that word reconciliation a ton there. And it's both a word that is kind of churchy, like you hear it a lot in church, but also talked about in social justice circles. I think there's a lot of conversation currently in culture around racial reconciliation. And if we're not careful, words lose their meaning the more you use them. Like, I don't know if you've ever done a thing where you say one word over and over and over, and then you start tripping out. You're like, what does it even mean? I think reconciliation can be one of those words that its power and punch can get lost if we don't reflect on it. So Greg and I were talking about this, and you had kind of a way of seeing it there. Like, maybe it's more like this. What was that thing?
So when we hear reconcile, I believe it has a context of bringing things together that are broken. And I said, well, what about things that aren't necessarily broken? What about things that are just injured? And then so that language got us thinking about the body as a metaphor for different aspects of things that need to be reconciled that aren't actually the same thing. So we jotted down a couple of different things.
So I like this because it provides nuance and a metaphor for what reconciliation is in a different way. That we're a body that has things wrong with it, and the mission of the church is to find healing and wholeness for things that have either been cut off or things that are sick. So we kind of went through that, like the many ways that we as a human body are messed up. And again, the church's job is to be, as Paul says, like agents or ambassadors or ministers of reconciliation, that our job is to bring healing and wholeness to the body of us as people. So what was the one, any of these that like kind of stood out to you as like, we got to focus on this, or this is an issue, or...
I don't think one is more important than the other. I think they're all relevant.
Yeah.
So the first one is things that are broken, right? Right. We're gonna list these out.
Sure.
List them out.
Kind of go through them. Yeah.
All right. Things that are broken, and that can be, if we're talking about the context of a relationship, and just all right. I'll paint the analogy, and then we'll go from there. Right. So if a limb is broken, you broke your arm, how you heal that joint is going to look different than if you were to just bruise or maybe tear a ligament. They could be similar, but there's different ways you would approach that type of injury. Just the same, if you end up, the funny one to me is if you're sitting wrong and your leg falls asleep. Well, it has been neglected, and because of that neglect, now you have to face the consequence of that, and you have to adjust your positioning, and you have to let blood flow continue because of something that you unknowingly did to your body. And now you have to work towards reconciliation around that. So like, how do we do that in our communities where we're unintentionally not reaching out or not connecting or not supporting a group of individuals, and we're not even aware of it? So just different aspects like that. Again, no one stands out more than the other because it depends on the circumstance, it depends on the body, the congregation, and stuff like that.
I think there's maybe sometimes they do though. Like if your finger got cut off and there's like pain and blood, that's your whole body needs to focus on reconciling that piece because it's a wound that's open.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Versus a less urgent thing to work through. I like that metaphor. For our culture, like the areas of our culture that are like people or groups or nations, genders, all that stuff have been cut off. And there's an open wound. So we as a collective body have to like prioritize the healing of that thing. What do you think?
Okay, so I like it. I hear it. I'm going to challenge it.
Okay.
I'm going to say that while there are priorities, and like different levels, if I have an itch right now on my back, that is very low priority. But guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to engage my core, I'm going to lean forward, I'm going to use my hand, and now my whole body is thinking about alleviating this ailment, right? So it doesn't necessarily matter what's wrong with the community. It's not like, okay, well, these issues we're going to tackle because they weigh more. It's more like, well, what issues? Here's the list of issues. And what can we do as a body within our gifting, within our ability? What can we do to help the community? We can't do everything. Like, let's say I sever my arm. I'll need to get some help. I'll need to go. I can't fix this myself, right? I'll need to seek outside assistance. So as a community, maybe we'll have to, get a third party,
together,
right? But yeah.
But still, if your back is itching and your arm is cut off, which one are you going to focus on?
This is a good point. If things are happening simultaneously, I might not think about the itch.
Right. Not that the itch isn't real.
Right.
Or needs to get resolved.
Right.
I like this metaphor of what reconciliation is because it's organic. It's like I also like that you brought up to like it's not just one body; it's all of us. It's like the human body. And I think about a lot of the justice issues, the areas where there is not reconciliation, where things are broken. A lot of it is where there's like an urgent need. I think that's why the conversation like around Black Lives Matter is important. People responded to that by saying all lives matter, and it's like, yeah, they do, but we're elevating this community that has been cut off or hurt. Is that a parallel there?
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good, man. I think that works. I think the problem is that there's no understanding that we are all one body. So like if when my knee, I blew out both of my patellas, by the way, at separate times. So I have bad knees. But I brought that up to say that when one knee went bad, the other knee had no choice but to pick up the slack. If for whatever reason my knees didn't know that they were a part of the same body, like I would have just had one bad knee. Yeah. That's a weird analogy, but I hope that makes sense.
Let's play with that one for a minute.
So, okay, let's do it.
In terms of reconciling your body or the community, when one knee is hurting and another knee is healthy, they end up carrying the weight. Who would be those groups, or what does that look like? When is like what comes to mind for me is, well, some of us are in a healthier place, so there will be a time for us to carry the weight, but that's never the end, right? The end is that eventually there's health restored, and then we can walk together.
There's got to be one part of the body that carries a load while the other part is getting rehabilitated. If the other part is just like, cool, I don't have to do anything anymore, that's why I have two bad knees, because one knee overcompensated for too long. So essentially, if we say that one group has to carry the load permanently, then we're just adding more problems, more ailments.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, so different ways your body can be out of sync or unhealthy as parallels to what reconciliation is. So we just wrote down some, like, things can actually be separated, and reconciliation means to bring it back together. Sometimes things can be sick or injured. Like there can be parts of our collective body that are have a cold or something where we have to get some treatment to that thing, and we have to work together. Things can be asleep, like you said. They can unintentionally be neglected, like forgotten. I think that is definitely true in our culture. There's groups within the church that we've said, maybe we didn't know we were doing it, but we kind of silenced you, and they're asleep, but they're there, but they need to get blood flow and be a part of the body. Things can be intentionally silenced or neglected. People can have body shame and hide things when and in fact your body is a beautiful thing, and you need every part. We thought this would be a fun one to bring up, just in terms of like a different way of framing the word reconciliation. It's not just like these two groups need to find friendship again. Right. It's like, it's such a broad term that means like finding health and wholeness wherever there's brokenness. So with that, I think it's important in the church to bring this up, because I actually think the church, one of the best things we can offer the world is to be a reconciled community to one another first. I think a lot of times people are like, oh, the church needs to do X, Y, and Z. But what if by being church, just by default, you're actually being something different in the world?
Bars.
So we wrote down an example. You want to tell a story? I was going to tell it, but we can leave identities out. But
okay.
Maybe just because I've talked a lot. And
all right. So there was an this is weird. Okay, there was an individual early in our Oak Life trajectory that had shared their experience around being African American some time ago and being pulled over by a police officer, and how this individual was blatantly mistreated by the police officer. Thankfully, nothing came in the form of physical harm, but name calling, just harassment, essentially. And when this individual shared this story, a different individual in the audience who happened to be a police officer, post-service, went up to the person who shared their story.
And was a white person.
And was a white person. That's definitely important, because the officer that was in the story was white. So this individual was like, on behalf of that officer, I know I wasn't there, wasn't even alive at that time, but I feel a need to say sorry, that shouldn't have happened to you. And as a person who represents the badge, and as a person, in that culture, that demographic, I'm sorry. And the two people hugged it out. It was a beautiful thing, and it wasn't something that everyone noticed. It was kind of off on their own. It was super organic. We noticed it because that's what we do, but yeah, it was good stuff. Am I missing a nugget?
No, it's good.
That was it.
Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's all good.
But it's a beautiful picture of, by being church and being community, you have to get to know the person to your right and your left, or if you're doing it right, or you're at least trying to. Some people in the room will be asleep. Some people in the room will be like actually hurting or sick. And we as a body can try to seek wholeness in our community first. We embody it. We do it. And I love that, again, because it wasn't planned. It was just the church functioning as a church, as a picture of reconciliation, of finding health and wholeness where things are broken or asleep or sick. And so there's so many different ways to go with that in society. And this is kind of a starting point conversation and introductory, but anything we want to add to that?
One last thought is around the sleep or silenced or just building relationship within the body. Work. Have you ever done a workout? Have you ever swam or did yoga for the first time and felt muscles you didn't even know you had? Like, there's an awareness of the body when the body is prompted to rely on itself to accomplish something. So when the work of justice is available to us, whether in whatever form it is, when any type of action prompts us to engage with one another in conversation, in effort, no matter how big or small the challenge, it unites those bonds and it allows the body to flow together. It's what creates blood flow, right? Within the body, both figuratively and literally. So anytime we can engage in that type of work together, I think we should. I think it's super healthy.
I think you're gonna get sore.
Exactly. You're gonna get sore, and it's gonna suck at first, and then you're gonna get better because of it. So you gotta stick it out. Yeah. You know, you gotta stick it out. Oh man, I could keep going. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about bodies and analogies and yeah.
So maybe we can close with a couple questions. I love that because engaging the work, being a part of church is an opportunity to engage the work of that. Mm-hmm. It's going to be messy. Mm-hmm. You can't do it alone. Mm-hmm. You're going to get sore.
Of course.
It's the kind of cozy comfort Christianity is kind of different than being a part of a reconciling community that's trying to engage this stuff. It'll push you a little bit. You'll stretch yourself, but we need each other really badly. Mm-hmm. So if we had questions for whoever might be watching this, reflection questions, what would they be? So one would be, where are there people in your life who are sick, who have been cut off in some capacity, who are actually hurting deeply, who have been neglected, and how can we find health together? How can we help those people? How can you carry some of that weight for a time so they can find some health? It's one question.
Yeah. And then you had made a comment earlier saying that as a church body, before we can reconcile the world, we should be reconciled. So with that same energy, some dude washing the window is kind of freaking me out a little bit. With that same energy, how can you, viewer, work towards gaining reconciliation within your own body, whether it is something mentally injured or physically neglected, or what type of ways can you seek development and health in not only your physical body, but in the small circle that you have and in the broader community, and then it works outward, starts in, works out. So to your point around the community and then also within the self, I think those are two good places to start for sure.
Cool. Well, we solved it.
Done.
We
boom.
Did fixed reconciliation.
Under 20 minutes this time. Bars. Anything else? Any closing words?
Nope. Be excited for our interview. The next episode we'll have a third guest, our first guest.
Yes.
Hopefully one of many.
Yes, and I will not be wearing this shirt next time.
I'll probably be wearing the hat.
Peace out, y'all.